Hi, my name's Staci Woodruff and I am a grade 5 teacher here at Rosemary Heights Elementary in Surrey, British Columbia. I have spent the last 2 years using the Tinkerine 3D printer in my classroom with my students, and last year I had the opportunity to teach grade 4 and move on with some of these kids, so this is their second year of using the 3D printer. The reasons I've chosen to use the 3D printer in my classroom is because it promotes so much thinking. Not only do the children have to come up with their own designs for a project or a challenge, but they really have to persevere in figuring out how to solve the problems that they're encountering. Having my students 3D design really allows them to print and then identify all the problems within their own design. A lot of the problems that my students have faced are printing where the pieces are not connected, so the center of their top falls off, or not including a hole at all, so they're left with one solid structure. Many students realized that when they went to go 3D print, their center circle was in fact 3 centimeters and not 3 millimeters for the skewer or the toothpick to fit in. So when they print it, they can instantly see what their problem is and go back to the drawing board with their design. So the challenge that I gave my students was to design a top that they could spin for 30 seconds. That's the only set of instructions that I gave them because I really wanted them to have the opportunity to be creative with their designs, but also to be able to identify what they thought was a good design and what they thought wasn't. The designs from my students are very different. Some have 4 spokes, some have 8 and are oval, others are 4 with no hole in the center, some have bigger holes, and then we have tops that are flat and tops that are high, and so the students really were allowed to start with any design that they wanted. When they printed them, however, they were able to identify that maybe their top was a little bit too small, or in this case, the center of their hole wasn't actually in the center, and therefore it's creating friction and not spinning properly. Students were able to go back to the drawing board and change their designs at any point that they saw fit with what they identified as a problem and what they needed to change. So this student started off with a design that worked quite well, but it was very, very tiny, and so he simply altered his design and making it a whole lot bigger so that it now works and satisfies the challenge.
My name is Kai, and I am in grade 6 at Rosemary Heights Elementary School. I got into 3D printing by the Tinkerine Ditto Pros that we have at our school, right here in our library. I really like 3D printing because I am able to create anything that I want, whenever I want. It's a lot of fun being able to have anything that I could want, and it can create anything that you could possibly need. I started printing Howard, I started creating Howard when my teacher told me to create a little monster. So I made this little monster. His name is Howard. Now, he unfortunately did not work out very well the very first time I printed him. He could not print on the printer for some reason. I don't exactly know why, but I think it might have been something to do with my own mistake. I started with a half sphere and made him from here. Unfortunately, that did not work, so I had to create his own body out of a cone. Once I did that, I was able to create him. I also added a nose, and I don't know what that is still, a nose or a mustache. 3D printing is going to help me in my future because I would like to be an inventor in my future, and I believe that it could really help me by putting my designs down and being able to bring them to life. I've never thought of being able to create something out of just a reel of plastic, basically.
I'm most definitely going to continue 3D printing with my students in the future. The process that they go through, the learning journey that they go through is super exciting and super important for them, but the most important part is the failure. They learn to overcome their failures, they learn to persevere, and they learn to not only find solutions for themselves, but to work with others and collaborate. 3D printing has allowed my students to develop all of their 21st century skills, to be creative, to communicate with their peers, to collaborate with one another, and to use their critical and computational thinking skills.